I have an idea of something I want to flow through with you today. It's nice to see you. Thank you so much for being with us again as we're hanging out. I want to explore seeing and hearing, not sound and vision, right? Not sound and vision. Don't you wonder sometime? Not vision and sound. I want to talk to you about the idea of being seen and being heard, and really the way you judge. We all know that we get into this. And then as we roll through the conversation tonight with you, we're going to make it furry, and we're going to make it scaly, and we're going to make it techie, and we're also going to make it lovely. You have for sure in your life heard versions of the quote that say, the measures of a society's worth is how we take care of the most vulnerable, the sick, the elderly, the young, those who face systemic disadvantages. Now, here's the thing. I know that you're saying to yourself, Gandhi, right? Gandhi, Gandhi. That quote is often attributed to Gandhi, but some smarty pants somewhere, some smarties somewhere did the work and figured out that actually Gandhi was never really on the record for saying any of that stuff, though I actually believe he probably would have meant it. Do you know who did say that, though? Do you know who did say that? Triple H. No, actually not that Triple H. It was a different Triple H. It was Hubert H. Humphrey, who was the former vice president of the United States. He actually said it. His was a little bit more about how it's government's role, and you can judge a government by the way that they actually said that. Incidentally, do you know which high school was named after Triple H in a film that's arguably the best or one of the best Gen X films of all time? Triple H was a big part of that. That very much Triple H over here. No, but the idea is that how we are doing as a collective is pretty much determined by how we see and hear those who need it, right? That, to me, to Bob, to the team here, Nathan and Tanya, is the point of accumulating strength and momentum. So you can use it on behalf of those who need it. Because sometimes you have it and they don't have it for lots of reasons. It's manifested in lots of ways, and every single one of them count. See, some big things, we fully understand this, they need the help of the whole damn planet. Just look across the world and think, I can't do this by myself. It's also not your responsibility to do it by yourself. Everybody has to come together. Then it's, who do you think is important to you? Who do you help? Think about the plight of animals. I want to get into that in just a second. I did promise furry and scaly, so that's going to come up in just a little bit. But the way that you actually help them. What happens if we start to understand them differently? We know that tech is going to help us get there. I want to get to that because you know this. Seeing and hearing can build empathy. And then, hopefully, empathy can lead to action. But to get to action, most of us need to see and hear the situation. And you have to see it differently. An ex of mine, who is one of my best friends, has said, understanding is important, but often that's not enough. The key to just understanding a situation doesn't cover it. What you have to do is understand the person in that situation. Understand them. And really, the way to begin to understand somebody is to listen, to pay attention. Compassion is a verb. Fighting your need to judge and see it through your prism, that's the practice. There are lots of things that can spark this. And if you spark it and then marry it, cohabitate it, depending on your worldview, with action, you can pull off some pretty incredible things. There's a guy out of San Diego called Dr. Kwane Stewart. Dr. Kwane Stewart is living it. He is a street vet. You're going to love it. It's so good to see you. I know that your origin story you've repeated a million times, but it's pretty incredible to think what you set out to do versus what you do right now in your life, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a stark difference between what I thought my career would look like and where it is.
Can you just walk people through what a day-to-day is like for you when you're on the street?
I pack a backpack essentially of medical goods, and I walk and I walk and I walk. I hit Skid Row. I hit some of some of these more impoverished areas of Southern California. And I just walk until I find someone living out in the streets who has a pet. And I'll just approach them and say, "Hi, my name's Kwane Stewart. I'm a veterinarian, and I offer free medical care to pets of people who are out of a home." And most of the time people agree, and I hit one knee, I take out my stethoscope, and I get to work, man. And if I'm under a traffic light that turns into my exam room, then I'll move on to the next. But what I love about the work, which is so different than traditional work, and I've been a vet for 26 years, is the one-on-one closeness with these people. I'll sometimes spend in 90 minutes, 2 hours with one person. And after a while, we're just sitting there like two friends. They tell their story. I've shared some very intimate things about my life with them. And, when I'm done, when we're all done, we're friends. I give my cell number to most of these people. So if they need to reach out to me again, if there's a reaction, if a follow-up is needed, a recheck is necessary, they can call me.
Have you always been a guy that that wanted this kind of closeness with people?
No. And what's funny about veterinarians is a lot of them will tell you, "I'm going into veterinary medicine, animal medicine versus human because I don't like people." And I was one of those kids who said that. I was like, I don't, yeah, I love animals, people not so much. This is an easy decision for me. But what I've realized in doing this work, and again, a vet for 26 years, doing the street work for 13, so split my career in half, and that's when I really got into this journey. You can't help but feel a connection to another human being that's suffering and needing help. And we've all been there. That's the thing. It's so relatable. We've all struggled. And if not for the support of people around us, we'd probably keep struggling. I mean, this hole this, this little ditch that all of us have dug ourselves during our lives, if not for my parents and my friends and people close to me, I may be still sitting in that ditch. Also, what I noticed is, if you're a true pet lover, there is something different about a real pet lover, right? An animal lover. I think you're gifted with a little bit more empathy. I think you see the world a little differently. And what makes it easy for the connections I've made in the streets is these are all animal lovers, right? There is a thread, this little furry creature that sits between us. There is an immediate energy thread between this unhoused man or woman and myself through this creature. And I don't know if it would be the same if I was just out in the world trying to help a random person,
Right.
but these people on the streets who have pets, we immediately recognize each other and almost see a little bit of our soul, which makes it easy.
One of the elements of judgment that you hear people say is that if you see a dog with a person who's unhoused, they say they shouldn't have that dog, and it's important to remind them that most people who have pets leave their pets at home for 8 hours a day when they go to work, and I think that's an element of it, right? It's hard. These dogs are probably having a great life in many respects.
I think they have a better life than people quite realize. And you made a point now that is part of my little stump speech when I'm out talking about it. Like, why should these people have pets? And I tell them because they are, for the most part, there are exceptions, for the most part, remarkable pet parents with loyalty and attention to their pets far beyond I can claim, right? Again, I go to work, I leave the house 8, 10 hours a day. I have two dogs sitting behind me here in my yard, a golden and a German Shepherd mix. And Cora and Bentley, they just want to be around their people all day. And these folks are with their pets all day, every day. And dogs don't care about they don't care about a Range Rover. They don't care about nice furniture, right? They want you. They just sit there and pine for you. So that's one area where they have it nailed. I met a guy named Walter. Walter, when I met him, had a dog named Dinker. Dinker was 7 years old, but Walter took me back 7 years before that when Dinker was a puppy. And he rescued Dinker out of a dumpster. And at the time, Walter, as Walter's telling the story, said, when I found Dinker, I had been hooked on just about every drug you can think of for nearly 12 years. It was just an addiction, an illness I could not shake, in and out of rehab, therapy, took medicine to get me off medicine. He met Dinker, and Dinker Dinker just opened up his eyes in a way that, as you hear him talk, was just such a remarkable thing. And by this point now, when I had met Walter, now 7 years later after meeting Dinker, he said, I've been clean and sober for 7 years. And the reason is this dog. He has been more impactful to me than speaking to any doctor or being forced to take some sort of drug. The responsibility, the obligation, the purpose, the love, the companionship, the security of Dinker changed my life. And that is the power that is wrapped up in these little four-legged creatures. It's amazing.
You know, I just wonder if being around all these animals all the years, the wins and the losses that you've had to have, if it's affected you on a really spiritual, emotional level. Because, you know, you hear a lot about how doctors sometimes become a little tougher. They have to close themselves off a little bit because the emotional expense that this has. Have you gone through that journey at all?
Yeah, I have. I was a shelter vet for 5 years, and it, it it almost killed me. I mean, I look back now, and I didn't recognize it at the time, but I was probably depressed. I wanted to quit the career altogether. And if you know what it takes to become a veterinarian, the time sacrifice, the money, you would think that's crazy. But I was thinking about walking away from all of it. It was the euthanasias, the guilt I carried, and it's a heavy load. I mean, what's funny, and sadly, my profession has one of the highest suicide rates of any profession. And I've given this a lot of thought. And my theory is this: you take you take a person at a very young age. We're talking five or I knew I wanted to be a vet when I was 7. You take this little child who loves animals. Again, as I said, carries a little more empathy than the rest of us. Wants to go out and save the world. And that was my thought. I'm going to go out and I'm going to learn how to be a vet. I'm going to save the world. And then you get caught up in the world, right? You're an adult, and there's realities you just don't ever foresee, and you're having to put your patients down, right? We're the only profession that has to euthanize their patients. It's a heavy load. I've had days where I step into room one and I'm euthanizing a 15-year-old dog that I felt like I raised. I saw this, I've known this dog since it was a puppy, gave its first vaccines. Now it's 15, the family's gathered around, it's suffering, we want to give it a peaceful death, and I'm the one to perform the euthanasia. And I feel the loss too. Then I step into room two, 20 minutes later, and it's a new young couple with a puppy, brand new puppy, and I have to like put on this different face and act excited, and then maybe step in. I've had days where then step into room three, 30 minutes after that, and I'm performing another euthanasia. And you go home at the end of the day, some days, and there is a toll, especially on a person who's very sensitive and empathetic. And you do that for 15, 20, 25 years, it takes its toll. So I've had moments, there are things I have to do to fill my own cup, or, remind myself why I do this, why it's important, and really pay attention to the victories, the moments where I save an animal, I save a life.
How do you protect yourself, though? What are your mechanisms to handle these really difficult moments?
I've learned over time to say no. It's a hard thing for maybe a young professional to do, is just say, I can't work that extra shift. I can't give any more today. I need time off. We're all veterinarians, I think by and large, are people pleasers. Like they want to be there to help. They can't say no. You get this guilt trip occasionally of someone who comes in who doesn't have a lot of money. Their dog's been hit by a car. I'm not the practice owner. I've been in this position more times than I can count. Someone comes in, save my dog, but I don't have any money. I will alleviate the suffering and the pain. But beyond that, if it requires $3,000 to fix a fracture, I can't authorize that. It's not my business. And that person will look at you and tell you, you're gonna let my dog die. And then you take that home. So, but to answer your question, I'm very active. I like being outside. I exercise. Exercise is probably one of the best gifts for clearing mental crud. And then my family, my dogs, things I enjoy. I have a good support system of friends.
Must be going through a lot because you look jacked. So you must be exercising all the time.
I do work out. I mean, more than for the physical, it's the mental.
Do you remember the reaction of the first unhoused person you helped with a pet?
Yeah, it was when I was at the shelter. On a day I thought about quitting the shelter, quitting the profession, actually, quitting just being a vet. I came out of 7-Eleven. There was this unhoused man and his dog. His dog had a bad skin issue. I stepped over, introduced myself, and said, if you're here tomorrow, I'll return with something that should take care of this problem. The dog just had a flea issue. Sadly, and this is where I realized the power of 5 minutes of my time. The dog just had a flea issue, but it had fleas for so long and so bad it destroyed the rear end. It looked like a burn victim on its hind end. I returned with a pill, $3. Dog took, saw the same dog, week and a half later, transformed. Hair was coming back, the infection was gone, dog was happy, wagging his tail, her tail. The man sitting in the same spot looked up at me, crying with tears in his eyes. He just said, "Thank you for not ignoring me." The reason he said that is because I had seen that same guy probably 4 or 5 times before I finally decided to stop. I'd walked right by him. I had ignored him. He probably saw that, and he just, with eternal gratitude, he just said, "Thank you for not ignoring me." And I mean, I I still get a little emotional when I think about that, because the impact of so little of my time to change that pet's life, and perhaps that man's restoring that man's belief in humanity, it will change my life. And I made a pledge to him. I said, "I'm going to find more people like you." That was 13 years ago.
Just in that moment. And
Mm.
do you, in that sliding doors existence of life, why you chose to stop that day?
I don't know. I'm not the biggest believer in destiny, I guess. I'm starting to come around. But when things like that happen in your life, on a day like that, when I wanted to quit, I just, I had in my head, I'm just going to walk away from this. I can't do it. I was going to be like a fitness trainer or something completely different from being exposed to the emotion and, sometimes the trauma myself of what I'm seeing. And then this guy he was there with this dog just sitting there, and it changed everything.
I think it's so beautiful that to avoid the trauma and the downs of this job, you took it to a place where people were experiencing it on a hyper level. And so you didn't actually avoid anything. You threw yourself deeper into this experience and the real pain in the world.
Maybe. Yeah, I did. And at times it comes at a cost because I'm seeing more suffering, but I'm also rewarded with the most sincere and genuine, thank yous and hugs and well wishes that I've ever gotten. Doing it for money is one thing, and people say thank you and they're very grateful when they leave the office and you see their dog healed a week later. But when you're when you do it for a pet that would otherwise may never receive care, for a person who could never afford to pay for that care, I mean, that's almost transcendent. That's how I describe these moments. A lady who had two cockatoos, two big, white, beautiful cockatoos. Uh, Her house burned down in the valley. She lost her entire bird collection, lifetime bird collection. Birds live a long time. They outlive people in some cases. Lost all of her birds except these two birds, and she was living on the streets with them. And through some connections, I helped get her set up in housing. And I remember when we got her set up in her apartment for the first time in years. She'd been living on the streets for years. We got her a brand new bed, and she just came unglued. I remember, the thought that she was gonna be able to sleep on a normal mattress for the first time. So, the pet experience is yes, but I have really grown to appreciate the human to human over time.
You have a foundation. How can people help?
Project Street Vet. You can visit our website. There are stories and more information, and we run on donations. So it's just everyday people who want to write a check for $10 or 50 or more, and we put it to good use. I volunteer my time, so all the human talent, for the most part, comes free. All my veterinarians in other cities that are now doing this volunteer their time, so we can stretch a dollar. We put it to the pet.
It's incredible. Thanks so much for your time, Doc. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Yeah, I put that heavy punk rock for just a second on there because I was so just trying to keep myself from losing it talking to Dr. Kwane Stewart. Again, let me bring this up one more time for you. ProjectStreetVet.org. I know it happens elsewhere. It's an interesting thing how just by talking about animals, it's going to bring people closely to an issue like this. But as he had said, he got into this for the animals, but it was his connections to the people where he realized what this is really about. The numbers for homeless people around the world are obviously enormous. In Canada and the US, it's very stark. Growing up in Toronto, I saw it. It hit me very close to me in my family and my friends as well. In Canada alone, up to 40,000 youth, last I checked, were homeless. 6 to 7,000 are going to be seeking a safe place to be sheltered tonight. 6 to 7,000 looking for a safe space. I want to tell you about this one event. If you don't know about it, it's called Cover Me Urban 2024. What they're doing is celebrating my old neighborhood of Rexdale, which is great. I'm so excited that they're doing that. Cover Me Urban 2024. The idea is to raise funds for youth who call Youth Without Shelter Home, YWS. So the event itself is going to have food, music, art, entertainment. It's all art, it's all people, and it's to raise money, but also to raise awareness for the youth within our own cities who are struggling with the realities of homelessness. And this is what's happening with that one experience tomorrow. What do they do with the money? Hygiene supplies, TTC transportation, food packages, safe shelter. So depending on when you're watching this, it may have already happened, but Thursday, May 2nd, 6:30 to 9 at the Rec Room. It's on Bremner in Toronto, yws.on.ca. That's how you can actually get to that. I love the work that they're absolutely doing. I want to bring on Bobby here for just a second to say hello for the rest of the show. Hello, young Robert. How are you?
Wow. Holding back tears, buddy. That's like one of the most intense interviews I think you've ever done. He was, wow. Just congrats
What a
to you
dude,
for
eh?
guy. Oh my God. That was
What a
just
dude.
inspiring. And I felt like
Yeah.
I learned so much. And he had such a beautiful way of looking at people in the world and what his training was for. And he wasn't really like bigging himself up or anything. He talked about how hard it was on him. Like
Mhm.
that guy was a real one.
You know, he told me before we went to air that he was one of those guys, like many people are, who judge, who sees
Yeah.
a young, able-bodied person and said, "Come on, man, you can get a job. Come on, you can get a job." And that it took this moment where he thought, of course I'm thinking that because I'm not thinking about their story. And it's like we established right off the top in the thread that like we'll mess around and talk about lots of things today, but this idea of seeing and hearing and how important it is. And listen, you and I love talking about this on the phone together regardless. So we just thought we'd put it on YouTube Live and be with people. And I love the comments, by the way, people coming in, Michelle saying already it made her cry right off the bat. And oh, wait, Bammer Biff says you clean up nice, which is nice. But this idea of if you don't open yourself up and challenge yourself to see things differently and to actually see and hear, it's going to be really tough to have hope for us, isn't it?
So what really struck me about that was kind of his creation myth,
Mhm.
passing the same guy 4 or 5 times and then deciding he could stop and then check in on him. And I think
Mhm.
that goes to your point about seeing and hearing, and
Mhm.
the fact that um, there seemed to be acknowledgement from the fellow that he was helping that perhaps he'd seen Dr. Stewart go past him a bunch of times. And you know, I don't want to be overly harsh to people who do that because if you live in an urban setting, there's a lot to see and a lot to hear. It's a lot to
Oh yeah.
take in,
Oh yeah.
and you have to
Absolutely.
you have to break those experiences down and do kind of what you can. It always sounds like a cop out when you say that, but it really is the start. But what I kind of loved about your point about seeing and hearing leads to action, and that was his story. Like he kind of lived
Hmm.
that. Like he took a moment and looked at a person, another creature, the dog, and another person, their situation, and said, "Okay, well, what's going on here? And is there some way I can put myself into this situation that might improve it?" Like that thing about seeing that just really hit me. That really hit me about this guy's story was not just that he did this thing, which is clearly needed, but he did it because he took himself out of his comfort zone and found there was a higher way of being. And I think that's kind of what we're all trying to do is take
Oh,
ourselves out of our comfort zone and find a better way to live. And
incredible.
this guy didn't have it, and then he made him the challenge for himself, and now he does have it. And by the way,
Mm.
there was one other thing that totally blew me away. I love the part where, and you brought this up, it was a great question, but the part about how we look at dogs with people who are unhoused and say, well, that's not a good situation for the dog. And his point was that's not necessarily the case. Like these
Mm.
dogs are with their people all the time. That we expect the dog to feel shame, but it's us who feels the shame for the person in that situation. The dog just wants to feel love. And if the dog is feeling love, the dog's already on third base.
That's right.
You know, let's not put our expectations onto what the dog's expectations are. That was actually really touching.
We judge for lots of reasons, but one of them is because we project. And the more we can judge on them, so we don't have to deal with it ourselves.
You know, it made me think, and there was a story that you and I talked about a while ago. You introduced me to this idea. I guess you had talked to some AI researchers, and we're seeing this more and more all the time, but we're hearing that advancements in AI are going to let us know pretty much now, and certainly in the near future, more and more about what animals are actually saying.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because when I was reading the comments during that interview with Dr. Kwane Stewart, I was watching the connection to this. And obviously this is you and me. And so a lot of the people who are going to be on this show with us right now, and would love who's watching it with us today, it's going to definitely be a group of people who are very empathetic towards animals. As you know, I've been a vegan for a long time, and lots of people are or aren't. That you don't have to be to care about animals. But there are lots of people out there in the world, lots of eras, lots of cultures who have no problem treating animals terribly. Yep. And that might change dramatically.
So I'm kind of living proof of this, because even though I haven't even heard through AI what an animal might be saying, and it's probably an animal with a more developed brain, a whale, dolphins, dogs, cats, I don't know how far down we can go with that, birds, but we're going to understand more and more what they're saying. They understand each other, but we don't understand them. But I thought to myself, how's that going to affect me? Because I'm a meat eater. You're not a meat eater. You already made that decision.
No, I know.
But it bothers me. But it bothers me for reasons. I kind of feel like this could be a game changer. I sent you a quote by Hermann Hesse, the famous author, Nobel Prize winner for literature. And he once said, everything becomes a little different as soon as it is spoken out loud. And that's what really jumped out at me, was as soon as we could hear what animals have to tell us, we're not going to feel like the only species in charge anymore. Maybe. I don't know. I think it could very much happen that way.
I attended a conference where some of the leading operators in the AI space were. And there were a lot of artists at this conference, a lot of writers, people like that. So invariably, a lot of the conversation left people feeling very dreadful. It was gloomy, but much of it was through the perspective of, my jobs are going to go away. Our jobs are going to go away. And that's really important. And I get that. And one of the things the AI people said is, yeah, and this is where regulation would really, really help and really matter. But what is also going to change, if it's done right, is advancements in medical technology, but also advancements in language. And then they dropped the AI animals thing and said they have already determined that with whales, when whales make noises, they're saying their name and they're identifying their clan. The whales are, and that they accidentally played one whale his own or their own voice back, and the whale freaked the out, because why would I hear my own voice? And we're there now, Bob, with neural language, transmitters, neural language processors. We're there early. They still need a bunch of money but the money that they said they needed, there was more than enough in that room to cover it, to develop the language. But animal AI is a thing, man. Asa Raskin, by the way, is a leader in this. Asa Raskin is a leader in the animal AI world. He's amazing. You've got to look him up.
Can you call up the Project Street Vet font one more time? Just because if someone needs one last push because they're thinking about maybe contributing, I'm feeling pretty strongly like I want to send this guy $10.
Okay, yeah. I think it's a good idea.
Did you contribute? You must have, because you talk to a lot of people, but you don't always,
Yeah, I haven't yet. It's only, yeah. I think that would be great. I think it'd be amazing. But here's the thing, Bob. Let me ask you a question. Not to
Okay.
derail this, and I'm sure the comments are going to go off for sure because
Okay.
we're getting
All right.
we're getting pigs are so smart. We're getting Dr. Doolittleisms and all that stuff.
Yep.
Tanya's going to send $20, which is fantastic. Here's
Love
the thing.
that.
You know me as a. I think it's safe to call me a non-spiritual person in the traditional definition, right? That I believe we're animals.
I think you are spiritual more so than you would acknowledge, but you're a materialist.
Yeah. My mom calls me a natural man because of my rejection of the other world, right? But here's the thing. Because I believe we're animals, and I believe that Ralph Nader has said this, the iron rule of ecology is that everything is connected.
Right.
I love a lot of people. Actually, I love everybody. I like a lot of people. I don't like a lot of people. If we start to process and start to understand animal language, who's to say that some of them don't suck? Some of these animals are good. Because, dude, if they're like people, there's going to be some pretty garbage things out there.
All right. So I'm glad you went there because I completely agree. Have you ever gone shopping in a foreign country?
Yeah.
And people recognize you immediately as a tourist, and they'll just speak in their native language, and they assume that you don't know what they're talking about. When I went to Italy with my wife for the first time, she speaks Italian, and she would say that waiter just said the worst things about those people. She would give me the running commentary on who they would rip. That person's an idiot American, blah, blah, blah. And I wonder if maybe if we sit with our dogs, if we're not going to get a little bit of that. Like we assume like that they love us, and I'm sure they do unconditionally, but I love my family unconditionally. Yeah. And I'll talk shit about them if I have to.
So there's going to be animals, dude, that
100%.
And look, there's going to be a lot of people out there. Listen, we live in a world, Bob, where we can hear human beings talk and we can see human beings suffer, and people still don't care and tell them it's their fault. So there's no guarantee that hearing animals and understanding animals is going to mean that everybody is going to suddenly warm up. But some definitely will.
George, let's just jump to some of these animals suck right now. Let's call up the pictures, okay? I don't even think we need to know what they think. Number one, let's face it, wasps. Wasps are basically nature's version of the little guy in a bar who wants to fight everybody. And look, I'm not saying you're a jerk if you're trying to eat or feed your family or if like self-protection, but let's face it, we've all walked past a wasp and kind of done this, like, come on, get out of here. And that wasp will bug you for the next 10 minutes.
That's right.
That is an asymmetrical response.
That's wasp will want to hurt you. How about now? Listen.
Okay, next, red-winged blackbirds. If you don't have red-winged blackbirds in your area, they dive bomb you. Yeah, just like that. They come okay, let's say I'm walking, do, George, do the red. They come zooming out of nowhere at you. And here's the other thing. They're smart. They recognize you. If they zoomed you once, they'll zoom you again. Now, I understand protect the nest. I really do. I'll throw punches if I have to protect my nest. Yeah. But there is a reasonable range of influence. If you're 500 meters away from the nest, now we're just sharing a space, red-winged blackbird.
Yeah, Bob. Carrie, by the way, quite rightly gets it. They're unhinged. They really are. They're really unhinged.
They are mean. And you know who's even worse? Thank you, Luann. Thank you. Yeah. Because the worst, and as a Torontonian, it pains me to say this because they are our baseball team's mascot, the Blue Jay. They are loud, they're angry, they're bullies. Now, interestingly, though, and this is why I kind of respect them. One of the reasons why Blue Jays and all members of the Crow family, of which the Blue Jay is a part, are thought to be kind of mischievous and always making trouble and lashing out is because they're actually too smart for their evolutionary station. Like their brains are really developed. They're extremely intelligent. So it's almost like they have extra brain power and it turns into messing with people.
Listen, birds have been here probably longer than we have, right?
They were dinosaurs.
They were dinosaurs. They're connected to it.
If you believe in that sort of thing.
By the way, whenever you say Blue Jays, here's my thing about Blue Jays. This is the fans' opinion of the Blue Jays, and this is what happens to the Blue Jays in this modern era. It just tanks.
Yeah, that was actually a pretty good living embodiment. Basically, Blue Jays are too smart and they make trouble. They're the Elon Musk of the animal world.
That's a good point, actually. I've never met a llama that wasn't a dick. I've never met a camel that wasn't a dick. I met one camel that I think was ambivalent, and I can respect ambivalent because it's not their responsibility to be nice to me. Ostriches are dicks for sure. Now, I love, as you know, there are people who hate raccoons, but I love raccoons because I don't think they're dicks. I think raccoons are out there just trying to get theirs. But let me ask you this, though. Skunks. What's your thought on skunks?
I actually respect skunks because they don't start trouble, but they end it. And I think that's a good way to be.
Did you tell me once that a skunk's defense mechanism is designed just to humiliate us? That's actually what a skunk is designed to do, is just to humiliate us?
It understands we're driven by shame.
That's right. Look at how many people are on board with animals suck. Swans are dicks. Swans are total dicks.
Swans are so mean. And they make that hissing sound. Yeah, they're skunks. I don't know what FAFO stands for.
Fuck around, find out.
Oh, okay. I should know that. Yeah. And that's true of swans, too. It's funny because swans mate for life. So they got the ingredients of being these spectacular beings. You know, you think, oh, that's lovely. And they're the subject of so many poems. Yeats's Wild Swans Are Cool. Love that poem. And then you actually meet one in the wild, and they are like, basically, give me your money. They got the switchblade out.
Let the non-married guy ask the married guy this question.
Okay. Why do I feel like I should tell my wife, there's something in the car she needs to get?
The two things that you bring up are that swans are dicks and swans mate for life.
Yep.
Are the two connected?
Totally. Makes you mean, buddy. Makes you mean. Well, because you stop having to be nice.
That's right. You don't have to practice being nice anymore. Oh my God, on strangers.
You fall out of practice.
Oh, look at Pagan, by the way. Swans are invasive species.
All right. We really opened up a Pandora's box here. We did that beautiful interview with Dr. Stewart, and now this has turned into an animal hate-in.
Oh my God. I mean, we're only identifying a few. I think that I would love cats more if we could understand what they're saying, because I love them already, because I'm pretty sure I know what they're saying. And I would respect cats even more. Dogs to me already are just this glorious animal, but I think that's because dogs really work in service of humans in many respects. And so humans just have a natural bias. They bring you joy. They bring you comfort. They take on your anxiety. There's a lot going on with a dog that we love because of the service they provide us.
Yeah, George, here's the thing about cats. If they could talk, we would discover they're probably always right. And you know what people hate?
Yeah.
People who are always right. We would find out that dogs probably know about as little as we do. And that's what we generally like is, can we be equally flawed in each other's company?
Yeah. Michelle says, the only animals I don't love are rodents. See, I particularly love rodents. Bob and I were going to be roommates once, and then it occurred to him that I had to feed my snakes, and I was feeding my snakes rodents, but I was feeding them in the bathtub. And Bob had a moment where he thought, I can maybe get past the fact that there are snakes in the house. I cannot get past the fact that you're going to feed them in the house.
No, in my bathtub, where I lay and try to feel better about life.
What is this? Ducks also have corkscrew penises because they're what? What?
Oh my! I don't even know how to manage that one.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm going to pass on that one. Oh my God. But you mentioned Toronto, by the way. I don't know if you've seen this. Let me show you this here. If I can bring up this particular camera. My drink mug tonight.
Uh-huh.
Look at this. My CN Tower glass that I carry with me now.
The CN Tower is amazing.
You and I did it once was it the World Wildlife Fund that we did that whole walk up to see if we could actually pull it off?
We sure did. I believe it was just shy of 2,000 steps. And you know what I remembered when I was about halfway up? I hate heights.
You know whose favorite animal in the world is dogs, aside from everybody? It just occurred to me I was going to do a joke, but it's actually true. Hitler loved dogs. He loved dogs, and I hate that I have anything in common with him. He loved dogs, but Jane Goodall loved dogs. And everybody asked Jane what her favorite animal is, and she thought it was chimps. Everybody thought she was going to say chimps because that's where her work was done. But she realized that chimps were really quite a lot like human beings, and that chimps can be very awful and very violent, very rough. But dogs. So Jane, dogs. I can't announce anything now, but something's happening that I'm involved in with Jane Goodall in the fall that I'm very excited about. So we can't announce anything now, but this is the biggest lead-in ever. So what day is it now? We're only in the beginning of May today, May Day. That in the fall, Jane Goodall, we're going to do something with Jane Goodall, which is going to be amazing.
I love to hear that. God, how old is she? How is she still out there doing so much stuff? Like her week is like her daytimer is packed.
Dude, people think Jane Goodall, because she's who she is, that she's got all this money and she's doing all this stuff. Jane Goodall and her sister live in the home that they pretty much grew up in. It's drafty. All the money goes to foundation. Jane Goodall's not living lux. She'll get flown to places and events, but she ain't living lux, man. Jane is a gangster. She told me that even the people who want to people want to check on her health to make sure she's okay. She doesn't have any time for that. She obviously makes time, but doesn't have much time for it. Jane Goodall is who you think she is. She is who you think she is, but edgier.
Yeah, she's got a kind of a punk rock thing to her, which is sort of nice. Actually, this is your T-shirt that I'm wearing today. Can you see it?
Is that a 930 T-shirt?
It's a 930 T-shirt after the hardcore club in Washington, D.C., where a lot of bands got their start. You know,
I love that.
Universe. And yeah, I borrowed this from your place one day. I can't even remember why, but so yeah, I think quietly hardcore is one of the sounds of the show, so I thought I would wear it.
I love this. Okay, hold on a second here.
Jane Goodall, who's hardcore in her own right.
She's absolutely hardcore. She turned 90 this month, so that's what she did. She turned 90 this month. I love that. Oh, this is hilarious. Cadmium, Gilrex, me Googling duck anatomy. I love it. I'm actually excited for the AI revolution because you know me, I love an honest interaction, and I don't want to act like all animals are dope. They all are dope in theory in the way that all human beings are dope, but that doesn't mean we want to be in the company of them and they want to be in the company of us. So I'm very excited because knowing at least what some of them think or how they communicate is going to be a far more honest interaction.
Well, so I'm not ready to say I'm going to go pescatarian. My wife was a pescatarian for 15 years. Then she actually started to eat meat again, to which her mom said, "Thanks to God." But that was the actual quote, was "Thanks God." But there's just something about it. Like if I can pull it off and make it work, it feels, I don't know, just the evidence is it's just too obvious. It's a more humane way to live.
There's a big fight happening. There's a restaurant in Vancouver that I ate at last time, which is a really good vegan restaurant. And there's one in LA, which is an OG vegan restaurant that have started to introduce meat onto their menus. And holy, you can just imagine the reaction that people are getting it to. You can just imagine the reaction. I'm one of those complicated vegans who I live and let live. I make my choices because I don't want to. I believe in the individual sovereignty as tops among all. So I don't want to be told how I should eat, and as a result, I don't want to tell anybody. I also do understand why people do. I get it, because it depends on why you're a vegan. It depends on why you're a Republican. It depends on why you're a lefty. It depends on why you're a Democrat. There's lots of reasons why you're a thing, and it's not an amorphous blob, but you should see. So when animals start talking, oh my God, those vegan protests are going to be outside those restaurants.
I just hope that there's whenever you see chimps and they've got cigars and they look like George Burns, you could put the glasses on them. I hope they're actually funny. I hope it wasn't just a fraud.
I think it'd be great.
That would be a good time actually to bring up a picture of my brand new garden.
Oh, your brand new garden.
Kind of veganism.
Right, your garden. I have a picture of your garden here.
I dug this up today. I don't have much of a yard. It's a city yard, but my daughter, who's 14, said to me, "Dad, I'd like to grow some flowers." And of course, she's 14 and she wants to garden. So I'm like, okay. But there it is.
There's your garden. Yeah, it looks like there's a body buried there, Bob.
Well, I don't know that there isn't. I live in Parkdale. I didn't put it there though. So I
But wait, so,
I didn't dig that deep.
so you're planting flowers only, or are you going to
Yeah.
plant food as well?
No, I think we're going to do flowers because when you're in the city, it's hard to do food because just animals come and eat it. You're
Yeah,
inviting
yeah.
raccoons to come and do a buffet in your backyard. So, you get
But
rats and stuff.
what if in a handful of years with AI technology, all of a sudden a squirrel knocks on your door and totally Oliver twists you, please, sir, can I have some more? Then will you start growing rutabaga or whatever it is that squirrels will want from you?
Yes, George. If that happens, if a squirrel comes to my door, hat in hand, and says, "Can I grow rutabaga?" I will. I started to wonder though why it felt so good because I was only out there like pulling weeds for about 10 minutes, and I
Mhm.
swear it really was like a shot of peacefulness in my day, and it was kind of a
Mhm.
weird day. So it was like this is really working. So I actually looked it up, and reasons why gardening makes me feel good, and there's actually a scientific reason. Can I share this with you? I was
Yes,
kind of blown
please.
away to find this out. So that in soil, one of the reasons why it feels so good in your hands, because when you're sifting good soil in your hands, it just makes you feel nice.
Yeah.
It contains a bacteria called Mycobacterium vacci, which actually triggers the release of serotonin in your head. So it's not just like some hypothetical philosophical thing. Putting your hands on the soil actually releases chemicals in your brain that act as a natural depressant and an immune booster. How awesome is that?
Okay. Do you know what's
Mycobacterium vacci, VACCAE, if anyone wants to look it up.
progress has been sold to us from the moment somebody realized they could make money on it. But all this stuff that we're talking about, working with animals, working in the soil, fighting health, all this stuff has been stuff that everybody knew. Ancient cultures knew. I mean, they knew. They may not have articulated what it was, but they knew what was happening. Working in the soil is it's great for your immune system, right? As you said. And it reduces inflammation in parts. There's all these things that are crushing us, and because someone is trying to make money off our backs.
Yeah, harvesting releases dopamine, exercise releases endorphins, the soil and bacteria in it releases serotonin, and all of that is nature's way of saying you are supposed to be part of the earth. And your point's a really great one. And I want to, you bring on people to talk about what they do all the time. I'm going to pitch you on an idea. This is a
Yeah,
foundation that I've always wanted
yeah,
us to do.
yeah.
And this is largely because my daughter is now 14 and she's grown up in the world of smartphones, which is different than you and I. You and I grew up in the world of the internet, but the internet and the smartphones are not the same thing.
Well,
Even
we got the
flip,
internet when we were in
even
our 20s.
right. But that said, even kids who grew up with the internet, it's different than
Yeah,
kids who just grew up with smartphones because
yeah.
smartphones are basically a supercomputer that notifies you constantly when there's something to feel jealous of. It is just insanity. And we have no way of knowing what this is going to do to kids in the short term. Um, that's a real bundle to try and unravel. And in the long term, who the hell really knows what the
Well,
effect is going to be?
I think the stats right now, and it's less about phones and more about social media, but the stats right now on young people, 12-year-olds, your kids, your daughter's age, and how she was a couple of years ago, specifically girls, and the connection between Instagram and self-worth and self-loathing and people trying to, the increase in people unaliving themselves. And the more we see, the more not the more people are seen, but the more we are voyeurs in other people's lives.
Yep.
That's why I said right off the top, that compassion, is obviously it's a verb, but that fighting your need to judge and see it through your filter, that's a practice because there are so many things out there they're trying to hack our brain. That's why the TikTok ban, like I get the TikTok ban. I'm not one of those people I totally get why a TikTok ban would be a thing, but why are we letting Facebook and Instagram doing what they're doing? Right? It's one's owned by, a US company that's
The,
not
the,
paying taxes doing this stuff. It's
yeah, the
social media
TikTok
that's really doing this.
yeah, a TikTok ban is about foreign ownership, and it'll probably be some form of divestment,
Mm-hmm.
uh, divested eventually, or broken up or something. Here's my pitch though. I
Mm-hmm.
want to create a foundation. I'm sure there's lots out there like this already, but called IRL in real life. where
Okay.
we just encourage kids to do things that are in real life. And community centers everywhere are closing. There's no funding for them. It costs some money to go anywhere. Like pools used to be free. Now you got to pay. And that's just the low end of things. If you want to join a sport, you got to be rich. You know, to play hockey, baseball, whatever, house league, like you need thousands of dollars now. You know, it used to be you needed $50 in a ball. You know, so the idea of us being, and to your point about seeing and being connected, I think this all happens when we get the hell away from screens
Mhm.
and actually participate in our day, in our lives, with each other, and even with just ourselves. Like the great thing about gardening, to bring it back, was what I realized
Mhm.
was in that 10 minutes, I just thought about gardening.
Right.
I was totally connected in real life. I didn't have my worries, and that was great. But I also didn't think about work. I didn't think about who's going to call me. I said, I'm going to set aside 10 minutes and I'm going to pull these weeds. And I feel like there's a lot of different iterations of this. I think live music is dying, and
Yeah.
that's going to kill music, or at least as we know it.
That's a
The,
that's a
we're
strange experience
supporting.
to feel. That must have been a strange experience for you to feel, to all of a sudden, because I know your brain, to all of a
Yeah.
sudden get so quiet. Must have been a very what did it feel like in that moment?
It was the best. And this is something I've come to understand about relationships, is that when you're young, you really strongly feel that relationships are measured by how exciting they are, by how many
Mhm.
things happen. And you know, that's fair. I mean, the early brain loves serotonin, all those chemicals that need to be released. I mean, it's fireworks and it's there for a reason, you know. But long love, long relationships are measured in long stretches of quiet, and how full the experience of quiet is. And
Mm.
it's like that. It's like when you're sitting with someone you really like and you don't need to talk. And that's friendship, that's family, that's a partner, whatever. I kind of feel like we need to find places where we can have that relationship with life
Yeah.
and what we're doing. And the phone is designed for your brain to never stop having something to be excited by. People talk about the importance of boredom. I think that's true. But the boredom's not the important part. The idea of not needing to be stimulated in order to have a thought
Yeah.
is the important part. You know, you talk a lot about how what becomes practice and what doesn't. I would put gardens in schools, and people would
Yeah.
say, "Oh my God, how could you do that? It's so expensive." But that's stupid. We put sports in schools. We put music in schools. We put math in schools. Like, why do certain skills? Usually because they turn into jobs, which is why we value them. And we're busy creating employees and not citizens or human beings. I think that every class at the beginning of the year should have a garden that they have to raise.
I'm gonna show you an image that was just texted to me, and you see if you
Okay.
can guess who sent it. Okay, you see if you can guess who sent it.
Who sent it?
Yeah.
Jane Goodall.
No, it
No.
wasn't.
Oh my God. That would be awesome.
No, no, no.
No, no, who sent that?
Tanya. Tanya sent that.
Okay.
Environmentalism without class struggle is just gardening. I think you're actually onto something about gardening in classes. I think there's lots
I
of
don't
data
even
out
understand.
there.
Can you explain that to me? Is the idea it's bourgeois to garden?
No, no. What he's saying is that there's no value. Like if you're talking about environmentalism and you're not talking about uh, the class war in environmentalism, it's just gardening. It's not knocking gardening. It's knocking environmentalism without class struggle, but it's gardening.
Uh,
That's the
I see.
idea.
So it's about the International Socialist Revolution.
That's what it is. Delta Blue says there are several schools with gardens here. Where's that? And
Bravo, Delta Blue.
oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. I wish
You
I
know
learned
what?
how to garden, but I grew up in that ethnic home, Bob, where my grandmother took the whole backyard in Weston, in Toronto, took the whole backyard. We had like a pavement, and then everything else she dug up herself, old lady, and planted food. A lot of what we ate, she grew there. I would come home, and there would be one of my hockey sticks she would saw and use it as a post for the tomatoes to climb up. She worked at a golf club as a she would clean at a golf club, and she would take, and it was a curling club, she would take the abandoned brooms, stick them in the soil so she could wrap her food around that. So it is amazing how far removed from making our own food we are, considering you and I are from families who grew their own food.
Dude, like my dad from our old house on Bowstead Avenue, which is downtown Toronto, would say when we first moved in here in 1960 or whatever it was, this is where the corn was. They had corn in the backyard.
I love it. Indigenous schools do this all the time, right?
Yeah, I love it. Honestly, like if we want to take climate change seriously, and that whole comment about it's just gardening without class struggle and all that, like I don't think anybody even has any fucking clue what it's like to live on planet Earth anyway. Especially those of us who are in cities, because
that's the headline, by the way. That's the headline. Nobody on planet Earth has any fucking clue what to do here.
I grew a bunch of vegetables last year. It made me so happy because I watched them go from seed to something we put in a salad bowl. And I felt so connected to it. I felt so freaking good about it. And
I love it.
And it made me very protective of that space. That was like a sacred space. And so when we talk about sacred space, we don't have that anymore. We only have space that we use. None of it is sacred. How are we supposed to look at the world as something we're supposed to protect if we can't see its essential sacredness?
We started by talking about the seeing and hearing, and I think there's something to be said about also seeing and hearing what you know to be true for yourself and your family, like what you know to be true. Listen, dude, I've interviewed a lot of these people. I don't want to speak ill about anybody, but I absolutely abhor this CEO culture thing about, and I get why, because honestly, they're making money off their students, but also their students aren't going to make money anyway because the governments aren't going to be there for them. Try as we might, some of us. But I abhor all the people who are getting famous, and all they do is attack the things that we know to be true, that we're better together. We're better, to your pitch idea, which I love. I'm all in IRL, this idea about being in real life. And it's this bullshit brigade of, like, I want, just guys are like, if you don't have abs, you can't work for me. If you don't do this, you can't do that. Eat all the animals. It makes you a man. It's like, oh my God, I hate it so much. And as a dude who's also like, I'm a guy that sees a fight when I see road rage and there's a fight. I'm not a guy who sits there and goes, oh, that's terrible. I watched it and I'm like, well, this is exciting, right? Because it's like day one, human beings going, oh, wow, take away everything we've learned as a culture, as a society, all the rules. Those two dudes right now, the dude who knocked on the window and said, get out of the car. And the other guy who's like getting out of the car, that's the beginning. That's the Cain and Abel story. That's who we are, right? And so I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh, can't we all just get along? Because I know we can't. So I'm not that guy. I'm one of those dudes who's like, yeah, life's been gnarly sometimes. But I hate those dudes online. I hate their behavior online when they keep us so disconnected from empathy and kindness.
What's Brad Pitt's character name in Fight Club again?
Tyler Durden.
Thank you. I was talking about gardening, and you went total Tyler Durden.
Like, I'm very Tyler Durden right now. I've got a lot of I'm swimming in a lot of darkness right now. So I'm in a very Tyler Durden phase of my life.
If I go to your place, is Meatloaf going to be sleeping on your front porch?
He's going to want a hug. He's going to want a hug for sure. I'm definitely in my Tyler Durden phase, but I've always believed that when there's a rare moment when you can see human beings being the animals they were. And I don't think it's great by any means, but I just go, oh, how's this going to go?
Well, you like to see things stripped down past their veneers. I want to do kilometer thermometer with you.
That's what I wanted to get to right now. Okay, because I wanted to, all right, let's do that. Kilometer Thermometer, the hit segment sweeping the nation, is where Bob and I take a moment to talk about the country that has given us so much in so many different ways and just keep you updated. I saw what Pierre Poilievre said the other day about the CBC and turning it into affordable housing for people, which I believe he would cut the CBC, but I don't believe he would turn it into affordable housing, and certainly not while Doug Ford's the premier. So I feel like what's happening in Canada is super insane in some respects right now.
He says a lot. I'm starting to wonder if he's not a bit of a studio gangster. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
He might be like one of these guys who's like, hold me back. Don't
Yeah.
make me get in there and fight. Like, a lot of these guys, when they're in opposition, talk about how they'll blow everything up. And then they get in there and realize, oh shit, it's all connected. And if I blow it up, I'm going to take if I blow up one building, I'm going to take down the whole block.
Yeah. But I feel like he will. I feel like this is, I feel like he will.
I believe you there. I'm not sure. This guy's a career politician, and I'm not saying that he doesn't have ideas that I don't agree with. I'm just starting to wonder, and I say this because he called Trudeau a wacko in the House the other day and got turfed for it.
Yeah.
And it's so obviously staged. It's so obviously WWE wrestling. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this, and then you're going to throw me out, and then I'm going to tell everyone, see, the whole game's rigged against this. Like, this whole thing is a big media stunt. Like, I don't know what this guy really believes and doesn't believe. I think there are people within that party who do believe this. But if this guy gets in there, is he really going to do all the things he says? I don't know. And I'm
this
not
is
saying
a guy who said he wanted to switch our currency to crypto, and then he's since distanced himself from that. But he is still the guy who said that because he believed it.
Yes, but he also said it because a lot of the people, like I'm sure, he was glad handing with him at chicken dinners were saying, crypto's real interesting to me, and he's like, I'm going to be the guy who sounds like I'm with them, again, Blue Jays and Elon Musk, crypto, they're all connected.
He's got a big lead, right? He's got a big lead, and he.
I think he's more of the wasp. I think he's the little guy who's trying to get into the bar and fight everybody.
Well, the wasp can hurt you. The wasp can hurt you for sure. Listen, and I'm not telling people how to vote. Like, I really believe do what you want to do. But whoa, is it stark?
I'm telling people how to vote.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Or at least how not to. Here's the difference between him and Trump.
Yeah.
Trump is a grifter who is trying to stay out of jail, who will say anything to get himself another buck or another day of freedom. He has absolutely zero convictions about anything. The thing he likes about autocracy is that everybody has to do what he says. There are no philosophical underpinnings to this whatsoever. Yeah. Stephen Harper was a bit of a hard ass. He was really a hard ass. But he was a career politician, and he had a particular vision for a kind of a conservative government. And there's things he would do, but there's also things he wouldn't do. And I'm wondering if Poilievre isn't more in that category, but he's trying to appeal to the people who like Trump. So he's like, yeah, I'm an agent of chaos. I'm going to blow it all up. Not really, but I am, let's just see.
I think depending on how many seats they win, and listen, there's a long time to go. And he already seems like, we always talk about it's getting the lead is one thing, holding it's another. It's different to hold a lead because when you're in charge, you start to get cocky and think you can just do what you do. And look, Trudeau did it. It happened to the Liberal Party. They had this huge sunny days win. They took over and they immediately went back on a couple of key things. And they've never had that. They walked in with a ton of positivity. And part of it is tenure. Part of it is the changing nature of the country. But part of it is it's really hard to hold a lead. And so Poilievre's got time to figure this stuff out, but he's been pretty clear about who he is.
Yeah, I think that's true. I will say this. What worries me most about him are not any particular policies. It's more the kind of cultural / identity game that he's willing to play, the people that he's willing to vilify, the people that he's willing to set apart as the others. These are the ones who are out to get you and your cohort, the people who have been empowered to feel like they are now represented in the mainstream because they don't say, hey, assholes, we're not playing that game. What they do say is, I won't say anything bad about you, which is basically like saying something good, to be perfectly frank. Like, that's the game that worries me. It's not that, hey, I'm going to shut down the CBC, because that guy, it's a bit like the abortion debate in the States where everybody was sort of like asleep and then it happened and it was like, oh, we're really here. I don't think the conservatives up here want that.
We're not going from a clown to a stand-up comedian. I don't agree. I don't agree at all. I actually don't. Listen, there's lots of things about Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, that I agree with. There's lots of stuff about him that he believes in as a leader that I don't agree with. But we don't, I how I feel about the Liberal Party in general. But he's not a clown. He has a vision, and it's a structural vision, but I don't think he's a clown. And I think that kind of language, well, by the way, heavy mental, go have it. Like, I'm not saying don't have it, but I think that language is missing the point. There's two very different ways to approach this country, and he's not a clown. You just don't agree with him, and that's fine. But I don't think he's a clown, and I don't think Pierre Poilievre is a stand-up comedian because I don't think he's that funny. But I do think he is a stand-up comic in one sense, in that he's like, it's crowd work. He's like the modern stand-up comic on TikTok. Poilievre's just doing crowd work all the time, just crowd work, because that's what he thinks is going to work. But somebody brought up a quote here, and I don't know if I can find it, by the way. But it was interesting, which was that what the Conservatives in Canada have figured out is that what the Republicans figured out is you can win. You don't need that much percentage of the population. You don't need that much to vote. So voter turnout will be really interesting in this country coming up in the next one.
Yeah, it's as it always is. It's who turns out to vote and how many.
There's the really, it's not big news in Canada. It was big news 1 year ago, but it is the 1 year anniversary of the passing of maybe one of the greatest storytellers our country has ever had.
Oh, I think it's huge. It's a huge anniversary. It was 1 year ago that we lost Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah.
He was 84 years old. He'd been sick, I guess, for a while, although really active for a lot of that time. Like, he's playing Massey Hall shows into his 80s. Mm-hmm. But I was actually shocked because it's funny how time flies. It feels like 1,000 years ago, and it feels like yesterday that we lost him. But I mean, he was you knew him. I mean, he used to come to your house.
Yeah, Gord used to come to the house of Strombo when we do those shows. He came over a few times for interviews, which is really lovely. But he would also just come over to watch a show. Gord would just, it was such a strange feeling to just, you look outside your curtain. I had the curtains go up. You look outside your curtain, and there's Gordon Lightfoot walking up the driveway, essentially unannounced, just to see a concert because he had a buddy playing. When Gord went through an awful lot in his life, and I think people who might be a little bit younger watching this may not fully, they weren't in the sphere of just how big and how meaningful Gordon Lightfoot was. Like, how meaningful. Elvis Presley sang Gordon Lightfoot songs that when Gordon Lightfoot got an award in Canada, Bob Dylan came up to induct him. Gord was on that level.
You can always tell the mettle of a person by who their friends are.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of take the temperature of the room. And when Robbie Robertson calls you a national treasure, you probably got something on the front burner.
Totally. Here's a moment where when Gord came by to the house, we sat down and just have a little conversation.
Are you a reflective man? Do you think about the life you've led?
Do I ever? Yeah, I do. I regret some things. I've been in a state of repentance for a long time now.
How's that feel?
It feels good. It's felt better at some times than it has at other times. But right now it feels pretty good. It's been better. But right now it's pretty good.
Making amends is a hard thing sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, trying to be nice, trying to be a decent human being. I like to be kind, I like to be nice to people, I like to be polite.
Mm-hmm.
Not like some of my kids.
I love that.
That is so
love
cool.
that.
You and him just chilling is so cool. Do you have the thing with John Prine when
Oh
he
my
came
God.
up with John Prine? Do you have that?
Oh my
you
God,
think?
yeah. Do you want to see it?
Well, I do, and I just want to explain this. So John Prine, who is a legendary songwriter in his own right, comes to the house, and it was a really big deal for us working the crew and making that show happen. And because he's a living legend, and he's a real one. And Gordon Lightfoot would sometimes show up to your house to see different things, like he came to see Steve Earle.
Oh yeah.
But this is one of my favorite moments in the entire run of the House of Strombo.
I started singing at over at the Riverboat back in 1971 was the first time I was playing down there, and I was playing like 3 or 4 nights. I guess I played all week long. And the second night I was there, my songwriting hero came in, Gordon Lightfoot. And I'd have to say you were 3 beautiful women, too. Sitting down at the front table there right in front of me, intimidating as hell, It's great to sing for my songwriting hero.
Gord, do you remember it that way?
Yes, yes. Yes, that's how I remember it.
In the description, which isn't always down below, depending on if you're watching us on your big screen or on your phone or on your tablet, wherever you're watching us, your computer, we'll put a link to that. So that video there, if you haven't seen it, is when John Prine, as Bob said, played a concert in my living room, and I think it's our highest rated. We put this channel up just to do it a bunch of years ago because we just thought, why don't we just have bands play? And we got like 30 million views or something like that, for only a couple hundred videos, which is pretty good. But Gordon Lightfoot John Prine was one of the absolute beauty ones. And we know we're going to lose people when they get older. We know that. But I heard somebody say this once about John Candy, and I felt this way about Lightfoot and Prine, which is you kind of deep down sort of were maybe hoping they could make it to 100 or 250, because the world needs that kind of edgy compassion that both of them could bring to the table. Oh my God, that was so great. That was so great. We'll put a link to that.
One of the things I love about Lightfoot is that he has the gift of the very intimate song, like If You Could Read My Mind. It feels really anchored in the experience of having a relationship, but he could also go really big and push the lens out really wide. The Canadian Railroad Trilogy, which I want to show you something in just a minute around that. But the masterpiece is probably The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I didn't know this until much later, but it happened in 1975. The song only came out a few years later. I mean, it sounds ancient. It sounds like it's part of history, but
yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah.
But the storytelling was so profound and so eternal that I think it made it feel really old. And I just want to go through some of his songwriting. Like, these lyrics are just peerless. He starts off and he's foreshadowing the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. He's talking about the November weather coming in, and the gales are whipping up early, and the ship sinks. And there's these lines that come right after the ship sinks. There's like a little pause for guitar, and then he sings, "Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours?" There's two things I love about that.
Oh my God, what a line.
It's just, honestly, I have the chills when I think about it. It's one is the psychological realism. He doesn't say, and everybody was scared. He doesn't say, and it was a terrible fate. He describes it as the waves coming over the edge of the ship, turning the minutes to hours. And we all know that feeling when we have something terrible ahead, and just time seems to, it distorts. It becomes totally psychological.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say Chekhov, who's a great writer, once said, "Don't show me the moon, show me the light on a window pane." And that's how I feel it is about the psychological reality of those sailors, is the minutes turning to hours, is all of that angst.
Editorial cartoons don't make me emotional.
Okay.
Right? Often when somebody significant like this passes away, an editorial cartoonist will take a shot at something to try to hit it. There was one after Gord passed where it showed Gord entering heaven, and it said, "Hey, there's a bunch of sailors that can't wait to meet you." And I looked at it, and again, I knew Gord, like you said, and so it was obviously sad he was gone. But I looked at that editorial and I thought, "Wow, this is going to." I had to pause so I didn't become a mess where I was. I think I was just walking by. It was in a convenience store in Toronto, a dep, as you would say in Montreal, and I saw this, and honestly, emotional as hell when I saw that.
It brings me to my second point about the universality of it. Was he drops that line, "Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours," after the ship sinks, and that becomes so universal. Mm-hmm. It really is just a question of how could this be fair? The soldiers were good, the families were true, they were trying to make a living, they were doing what they had to do. How could everything turn against them? What did they do to deserve this? Like, the way he captures all of these things in just a little couplet, like, I don't know how you do that. And then I didn't write this down, but I want to share this with you because I just love this line. When supper time came, the old cook came on deck saying, "Fellows, it's too rough to feed you." At 7 p.m., a main hatchway caved in. He said, "Fellas, it's been good to know you."
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like honestly, the I got the chills. The storytelling, incredible. There's a second thing I wanted to go over lyrically with him, and this is something you and I should do. I always wanted to make a vampire movie and then have his song "Sundown" be in the soundtrack, because I always thought it would be the perfect complement to a vampire movie. Sundown, you better
Take care. If
care.
you know me,
I'm
I'm
out by your backstairs.
you're backstairs. Oh, I love that. I love that. I
It'd be such a great juxtaposition to vampire.
We have to do what Kevin Smith did on his when he did the Smodcast or whatever. They worked out a movie on their podcast, and then they actually got it made. We should do that eventually. Do like we do like, I think theirs was Tusk, but we would do a separate broadcast, and we would probably be able to figure this one out. Kevin, by the way, wants to do security on your set for the movie.
Oh yeah, totally. You're in, Kevin.
Yeah.
Michelle, that line kills me every time too.
This is great. The distortion of time is beautifully reflected in the repeated musical motif in the song. We should actually have Catherine on our show. I've known Catherine a long, long time. You've met her too, Bob, back in the day. A wonderful journalist covering classical music and opera now. There's a lot of great stuff. I think next week on our show, on our Apple Music show, we took the most you and me peg ever to build a show around.
I know the one you're going to say.
It's the 200th anniversary of the Ninth Symphony from Beethoven, which of course has the Ode to Joy in it. And so the whole show is just joy. That's the whole show. We should have Catherine on to talk about this stuff at some point. She's the expert at it.
I would love that. It's, classical music is dear to my heart. I wanted to grow up to become a classical musician. It was the music that I fell in love with first. And, in the end, I discovered I wanted to be a pro at it, but I was really just a good amateur. And I mean that in the most honest way. Like, I was somebody who was good enough to love it and do it, but probably not enough to put soup in the bowl, for what it was worth. My dad has a fun Gordon Lightfoot story. So he did a series of interviews with him. My dad's a radio guy, and he's recording him. And one night, Gordon comes in, and he's a bit of a mood and stuff. And he goes, "You know what? Just turn on the tape. I've been lying to you the whole time." And my dad, and so my dad looks at him and says, "Gord, I've been lying to you too. So let's get started."
Wet Ink Design wants to know, what do you play?
I played trumpet. I was a trumpet.
Play trumpet. I was a piano player, still am, but I went to the Royal Conservatory for my exams. Did you ever have to do those recitals? Those kind of like those test exams?
No, because I never started taking lessons until I was about 16, which is, wasn't really great for my career. But
right.
No, I never really did that kind of stuff. But I did play in some conservatory orchestras and wind project and stuff like that. So that was cool.
That's pretty fun. Gordon Lightfoot, a year.
It's been a year.
When that clip that we played of John Prine, I want you to watch it if you're watching this now, if you haven't seen it yet. But we'll put it, like I said, we'll put a link to it in the description. But when you scroll to that part, we didn't play the song part here on our live stream tonight because of the copyright on it. But Prine sings this lyric where he says, "Ain't it funny how an old broken bottle looks just like a diamond ring and is far, far from me?" And he's singing a song, and I just look over, and Lightfoot's eyes are closed, and he's mouthing the words, singing along with Prine. And then I see a tear come down Lightfoot's eye, and I look over at him, and I'm trying to keep it. So my uncle, we talked about, my uncle was in the room. He introduced me to Lightfoot and Prine. So my uncle is standing over there. The only time he's ever been in my house was to watch Prine and meet Lightfoot. That was happening. I look over. Jim Cuddy is crying from Blue Rodeo. Sam Cash is crying. Mino from Colorado is crying because we all saw Lightfoot cry. So Lightfoot's got these tears going down. All of a sudden, my eyes well up, and and you can see it. It's so subtle in the or it's not black and white, this particular one, but it's so subtle if you watch it. When Prine starts to sing that song, you could just see the little glimmer of the tears on the side of Gordon Lightfoot's face. And I remember you and I talked about it afterward, thinking, well, Gordon Lightfoot cried to John Prine in the house, Bob. I think we're done. There's kind of nothing else we can do after this.
At the very least, we should take a long break.
Yeah.
By the way, I have a recommendation. One of the things we like to do is recommend
Yeah.
stuff for people.
Yeah.
This one's specifically for parents with younger kids. If you're looking
Okay.
for stuff to teach them, can you call
Right.
up that book cover? And I've got it
the book,
here. Yeah,
this one here?
it's actually
Yeah.
Ian Walsh is the artist. It's a kid's book to the lyrics of Gordon Lightfoot's Canadian Railroad trilogy.
Mhm.
Actually, here I got this back when I worked at the CBC. That there, Polyab hopefully won't dismantle.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it was really cool. So like, it is just like a kid's book, right? But with like this beautiful artwork in it and stuff. And
Mhm.
House of Fancy publishes this. And I just thought it was really cool. And what I really loved about it was sometimes you really feel the poetry of stuff when you kind of juxtapose it against what's for kids.
Right.
You know, it was
And
just really simple, beautiful language.
do you think that kind of storytelling
Are you
exists
Jiminy
anymore?
Glick? Are you Jiminy Glick right now? I wonder.
Are you were big in the 90s. In the 90s. It's like watching paint dry. By the way, I have, in case you ever start getting boring, I just have my own book here that I will bring out. If you just start talking, I got A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr, and if you start getting boring on this show, I'll just bring it out.
That's awesome. I got a couple I can choose from. I got Stephen King's Carrie, which I just started rereading. It's really good. We just passed the 50th anniversary of it, which is very cool. So
Incredible.
Yeah, I got all kinds of stuff here. You know, I can doodle. I got a pad. You don't
Hey,
get bored.
you know what? We did that Kurt Cobain thing on this YouTube channel, which I want you to watch as well. We should do one on the 50th anniversary of Carrie, because it's a story of obviously talent and resilience and fighting through a system. It's a story of trying to beat addiction. It's a story of, I'm not even talking about the book. I'm talking about what Stephen went through.
Yeah.
It's a story about a partner who believes in her person so much that she's actually the reason this thing. We could really do a deep dive into Carrie and what Carrie has meant for so many people.
Did he try to throw the manuscript to Carrie out and she saved it?
Depends on who you talk to. I've talked to Stephen King about this, and I think as he describes it to me, he threw it in the trash. She picked it up and sent it to a publisher, and this started the ball rolling. I don't know if that's exactly the veracity of all of that, or if it's mythology, but that is essentially what I hear.
Well, between the truth and the story.
Carrie triggered. Sissy Spacek was fierce in that film. I love it.
That is a great point, and I think Sissy Spacek is one of those actors that never fully got their due. Tell me what movie she was bad in.
Sissy
There
Spacek.
are none.
Sissy Spacek in Badlands
Is the best.
It's the best. Badlands with Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek is the best, and that and it's funny, people don't talk about this. Maybe because Sissy Spacek looked at Hollywood and the whole thing and went, "I'm out, man. I don't need this."
Yeah.
You know,
I think
I
that's
don't need
exactly. She didn't play the game, but if
Yeah.
you look at that run in the '70s, she did Carrie, she did Badlands first, and
Yeah.
then there was Coal Miner's Daughter, which I believe was 1980, and I think she was
Unbelievable.
nominated for an Academy Award. But God, was she good as Loretta Lynn?
Oh,
She was
and of course,
so
all this stuff,
vulnerable.
of course, south of the 49. I think we should just give the end of the kilometer thermometer a moment. Rest in peace, Gord. There are lots of times where I wish there was an afterlife, and I usually wish there was an afterlife because I want Gord and John Prine and Johnny Cash to be hanging out, and I want them to see which one of them is going to convince Patsy Cline to come out and play with them. I want that to be happening in some realm somewhere.
Okay, who has the better house band? Heaven or hell?
Oh, for sure, hell.
Are you
Oh,
sure?
for sure. Oh, for
'Cause,
sure,
you know,
hell.
Gord is up there. A
Yeah.
couple Gords are probably up there.
That's true, Gordon. That's true. Maybe. Well, assuming they all went to the heaven that we think we want them to, then yes, maybe they do. But it's a very
Look,
different kind of show because my band is going to have Stiv Bators. It's going to have all four of the Ramones. It's going to be Joe Strummer is going to be there maybe, although Joe's probably in heaven too. If there is a heaven, those guys are all there.
See, that's the point. The rock and roll saints are all there when Patti Smith eventually goes. And what'd you say, 250? Was that the year?
250 years from now, we hope. Yeah.
she's going to go to heaven. Like, oh, like think about all the ones who are good ones who went to Nina Simone's in heaven.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Can I make a segue that, yeah.
Think about the setting. It's going to be like seeing you two at the Sphere.
That's assuming, I guess, yeah. Well, listen, according to my mother, who is a pretty intense connector to heaven, I don't know that we're gonna be there. So based on the rules in her book.
Your mom's standards,
yeah,
are very high.
They're very high
for who goes into heaven. They're very
high.
I'd like to believe that it's a little bit more like modern day high school grading. Like when we were kids, it was really hard to get an A. Now they give everyone an A. I hope when we get to heaven, everybody gets an A.
Yeah, I would love that. I would, because then I'd get to see you.
According to your mom, well, I suppose in both cases, we'll be seeing some band somewhere.
Let me let's transition for a second to. I want to take you to another part of the world where we're living hell on earth. By the way, and we're living hell on earth in so many different places. We know what's happening in Gaza is hell on earth. We know that what's happening in Haiti is hell on earth. We know what's happening in so many parts of this world is hell on earth. In many respects, what's happening in Congo is hell on earth. And one of the things that, Bob and Tanya and Nathan and myself, just the crew who kind of cobbled together this live hangout, we want to have fun. We want it to be kind of cute and playful, but we also want to make sure that we're just like, hey, this is what else is going on out there. So I want to bring somebody on now who is living it because it's his family, it's his people, and he is so. It's just what's happening in Congo. We know extractive mining is causing huge problems. We know that the history of colonization, the history of mining, all these things are playing this meaningful role. And the World Food Program is definitely doing this work on what's happening there. There are lots of people on the ground. There's another member of the World Food Program family. I've been part of them for almost 13 years right now. His name is Distel Zola. Distel Zola I knew of initially because he's a football player. He's a soccer player. Distel Zola. And he was gracious enough to give us a little bit of time just to give us a little insight of what's happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo right now. It is really nice to see you and really appreciate you taking the time to give us an update on what's happening in DRC right now. Can you give us an update on the situation and where we are now in DRC and what you witnessed?
Yeah, so the situation in the east is very difficult because you know about the conflict with the rebel group. So the problem is now the population move because their ground is occupied by the rebel, and they have to go to the city. But the problem, they have the habit to live in the countryside, so it's very difficult for them. And the girl, or the women, are raped, also crowded. A lot of disease like malaria, like polio, and it's very hard.
The numbers I've seen are somewhere around 6.5 million people have been displaced. Almost 23.5 million people are projected to be acutely food insecure. And I think sometimes when people hear numbers like that, it becomes almost too much to imagine that it's happening one at a time to a human being and their children and their families. Is it getting better in any way?
When I went in Congo in mission with WFP, you can see you give the food to people and they can have, one moment they can just have food. So I think is important.
Who have you met that their story just stays with you?
One mama, she created a hair shop, and I was very interesting how she managed the things, because they are live. People live, so people do like business over there. So people try to get money also. So it's not easy. But the thing is, even inside the war, inside all the problem, you still have the humanity of people.
And these are people who are trying, people who are suffering, and through no fault of their own. This legacy of brutal colonization and and exploitation from outside forces, outside countries in DRC. It's been very significant and tragic over the years. Can you just talk about the impact that has had?
Yeah, I think is hard also for the economic of the country, because we have rich in the ground, but we are poor in the reality. So the contrast is bad, is not good, and I think in the future the balance will be good.
Are you optimistic that will happen?
I think after is this conflict, this problem is since years and years, and the world we have to take the voice and to speak to all the world to explain what's happened over there, because all the smartphone, all the car, all the things is coming from Congo. So it's important to everybody have to take his responsibility about that. It's not fair what happened in Congo, but the thing is to not give up and to keep going on until the things be good.
For somebody watching, what can they do to help? What would you like to see from people?
No, the most important is for as I say, to keep going, to say what's happened in the east of Congo, to say this conflict is not about like 30 years and it still continues. So it's important for all the Congolese around the world, if you get the chance to have the voice to talk and to say what's happened in Congo, I think it's gonna be good. So we all have the responsibility to cry and to say no more.
I really appreciate you taking the time today to give us some insight. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much, George. For me, is a big honor to be in front of you today, because I know what you did in your life is amazing, and know is almost, I think, 12 years. You are high-level supporter for WFP, so you're a big example for all the generation, for us. And thank you again to be what you be.
Merci, Distel. Bonne soirée.
Merci beaucoup à toi. Bonne soirée.
That's how you can find Distel Zola on social media, by the way. You can find him right there. Work with the World Food Program is super fun, Bob. Obviously, it's fun in that I feel like I'm living a full life, but it's also super tragic when you see what's happening. But when I get to meet people like Distel, it brings me an enormous amount of joy, because you see just how close to home all this is. And by the way, boom, look at this dude. There he is.
That's very cool.
He played with France, cool. And then he got to ultimately play, registered with his ancestral heritage as Congolese, and played for the national team. And he said when he walked out there, that feeling, oh my God, that feeling of knowing everything that his country has gone through and getting out there and just being a part of it, just how incredible it was.
I'm really happy that you're connecting us all, and Tanya and Nathan, everybody's pulling this together, to some really interesting people who are doing some really great stuff. Most of our media consumption is built around narcissists who just want to talk about themselves. I suppose guilty as charged. But honestly, you've been really introducing us to some really very cool people, and it's quite inspirational to see that your life is, as the great Joe Strummer says, the future is unwritten. We got to write it, and these people are writing awesome futures.
Well, we're early in this thing, that we're doing on this YouTube. But you and I talked at great length about how look, between your show Off the Record, and the talk show, and then the Red Chair show, and then the Much Music stuff, like, we've interviewed all these celebrities. We've talked to them. And it used to be access was interesting. You could bring a celebrity to a couch and do an interview, right? But as time has gone on, everybody is everywhere all the time. There's constantly having these celebrity conversations. And what became super interesting to me and I know to you was, look, if you don't have big name celebrities, you're not going to get big numbers, but I don't care about that I do in a way, but what I really care about is what kind of impact can this have ultimately. Not, look, we want this show to have lots of people watching so we can keep it going, but people who are doing great work, like Distel Zola, a football player who really feels like I need to come home and do something, with my people, that to me is the space I want to create. And having Distel and having this guy on earlier, Dr. Kwane, these are remarkable people. And you and I have had everybody on our show. And why would we try to replicate that? We would just go do that. I don't want to do that anymore. We'd still do it in our own little small ways, but not like that.
George, being famous doesn't mean you're necessarily a vapid asshole. It just means that you're usually a vapid asshole.
Okay, look, dude, we've been on together now for about 90 minutes. Why don't we wrap her for this one? But let me ask you, what are you? Distel Zola, don't forget to follow him on social media. Don't forget to go to Project Street Vet as well, which is, in the World Food Program, of course, doing as best they can. I know that there's lots of complicated feelings about the United Nations. I get it. I hear about it. You get in my DMs about it. I get it. But I think I know that what the World Food Program is doing is remarkable. And there's a reason they got the Nobel Peace Prize. Granted, so did Obama. And I guess it doesn't matter, but they got the Nobel Peace Prize. The World Food Program is doing all this good work. So what are you excited about this week?
I'm going to throw that back to you because I'm going to go off when I tell you mine.
I'm excited to see where these student protests go, Bob, that are happening in campuses. I think that, me, I'm a big believer in the value of a protest, even when the people I disagree with. Now, I just happen to agree with these pro-Palestine but also I was not against the trucker convoy in terms of protests. I think protests are very important. It's imperative to who we are as a people. So I do think that there are a lot of people who talk a big game about what they think is important. And the moment somebody disagrees with them, suddenly that other person doesn't have the right to do it. There's a couple things about this. The militarized cops going in there and attacking these students is hella problematic. And if we start to take a look through the course of history, when militarized cops attack kids on campuses, there's usually a reason for it, and usually it's the wrong side of history. So I'm really interested to see where this goes. But what I would say is we're getting all this information sent towards us. This is out. The police said these were outside agitators causing this, and then you realize that actually wasn't the case. That the constant lying, and here's the one thing so you got to make sure that we'll do our best here, but your sources, who are you getting information from? What is true? The social media clickbait headline thing is not the way to go. And so this is the thing, Bob, that I will say this. You know me, I'm if Trump was the president and this was happening, the Democratic people in the Democratic Party would have lost their minds about what the Republicans and Trump were doing. That's not happening the same way here because it's Joe Biden. I know that inconsistency and hypocrisy is part of the human element. And I don't, by the way, expect you to comment on any of this, but what I'm really excited about is to see, I want obviously the killing to end. I want all the hostages to go home. I want all that. But I'm really excited to see what's happening because this, for all the knocks on the younger generation that people in our age group like to give, for all of it, this generation, this era, they're not having it anymore. And this is the most exciting thing. And your daughter's age, when she gets to a certain age where she starts to it's so exciting to see what this generation is doing. And for Democrats, liberals to remind themselves, if this was Trump in office in the US, there would be a very different reaction happening in the media. There'd be a very different reaction happening. I believe that probably. So I'm very excited to see where this goes. That's my thought. Now, I'm also very excited to watch the hockey game tomorrow. So I'm a complicated man, Bob.
Well, they're both part of our culture.
Yes, they are.
You're allowed to contain multitudes.
I am, as you do as well.
Yeah. With regards to the protests, I'm curious to see if it spills over into more widespread boycotts, because I know one of the big things that people are pushing is like they don't want to see companies that support certain practices or certain. And I'm a big believer in protest, but increasingly I've become a bigger believer in boycotts, because I think that government has power, but business has more power. And we used to say the penny is mightier than the sword, but apparently the credit card is more powerful than both of them put together. So if I'm just curious to see.
I think you're right. You're right. Business has more power. You're right.
I think if you want change immediately, cost people money. And that's a little bit cynical, but it used to be cost people votes, but they're not afraid to lose your vote anymore.
And protect the right to protest. Protect the right
100%.
to protest. You have to protect the right to protest, because especially if you don't agree with them, because the principle matters.
You're right. And it is especially because, though, for us here, the larger democratic question is, are we going to be allowed to say things vehemently?
Yeah.
If we strongly oppose them. And the
Totally.
question should always be yes. You mentioned hockey. The other thing is, and this is where I'm going to go off a little bit, is I'm in that complicated position that I am in every spring when the Leafs are in the playoffs. They're my hockey team. I love them. I had the pajamas and the bed sheets when I was a kid.
You and John Tavares, you had the pajamas and the bed sheets?
One thing he had that I didn't, though, was talent. I was in the backyard. Yurko Michaluk played net, and we played Showdown every night until it was dark, and then he came in, and then I walked him through the used car lot back home, and that was my night every night. I hate the Leafs. They've done this to me over and over again. But here's the thing that's interesting. Like, I hate this particular iteration, and you're a sports guy, so you'll get this. The Leafs haven't won since 1967. And it's the longest drought in the NHL. It's one of the longest droughts in professional sports for any franchise, championship-wise, in North America.
Current ones, yes.
Current ones, yeah. And the city is so in love and so obsessed with the Leafs that this is a constant sense of angst that we all carry with us. So whichever team eventually breaks this drought is going to be remembered forever. And I would just hate it if it was these guys. Like,
because you don't like this. You love the Leafs. You hate this team.
I love the Leafs, but this particular squad is filled with biting, fighting, sucky behavior, under delivering, disrespecting the fans. I don't have it out for any particular player, but in 50 years, I don't want my grandkids going to Mitchell Marner Elementary, which is what's going to happen if they win the cup this year. So I have to vote against them for history.
When the Leafs went down 1-3 in the series, I remember saying to somebody down here, if you want to know the leafiest thing that can happen, because I watch Hockey Night in Canada, as you know, I used to do it, but I watch Hockey Night in Canada. I listened to the radio. I watched the broadcasters midway through the second period. They were looking online what hotel they were going to stay at when the Bruins played the Panthers. Like, they were already done. I've never seen professional broadcasters abandon midway through like this quickly. I kind of laughed my ass off, actually. But I said the leafiest thing that's going to happen is they're going to go and they're going to eke out a victory without Matthews in Boston. And then game 6 to me is always the game. Because this is where the Leafs could do it. And Bob, just to spite you, it will. I still believe the Leafs. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I still believe the Leafs are, in my mind, the favorite to win this series because the Bruins have blown a 3-1 lead last year.
Brian Burke, who used to run the team, said whoever wins a championship in this city is going to have a school named after them.
Yep.
We can't let this happen.
You can't let it be Mitch Marner. I like Mitch Marner. What a player.
Yeah, he's a great player. It could be an Austin Matthews school. I could probably live with that. Then the parade is back on. Honestly, this parade's been on since 1968.
Mitchell Marner. Listen, there better be there better be a Kyle Lowry school before anything else.
That's one you could go to, because I know everybody's obsessed with, just win, baby, and it's all about the W's and all that. And I know that's the kind of culture we live in, but I would still like to think that sports, like, these people represent your community, and it's such an old-fashioned notion because they don't come from here. They don't give a shit about the communities they play in, by and large. Not always. I mean, by and large. But it's a business. I understand that they're treated like commodities, so they treat the whole thing like a hustle. I get it. The whole thing is one gigantic hustle, except for the fans still believe. We still believe. Now, if you walk into a room and you don't know who the dummy is, chances are it's you. So that's all of us.
I'm pulling up the scores in the bracket. By the way, the Oilers have just scored. Evander Kane has scored, so they're up 1-0 on the Kings in the first. Edmonton's probably going to go on tonight. They're going to move on. My pick to win the cup, weirdly, were the Dallas Stars, and they got a win tonight, so they're still trailing. Tomorrow's going to be a heavy night. Listen, I'm a Habs fan, dude. We have sucked for so long, but I'm actually optimistic about where we are.
You guys may have sucked, but you're not losers.
That's a great point.
Right? The Leafs have been quite successful, and they always come out at the end of the year looking like losers. And my theory, which is you can get into any argument you want at home. Don't embarrass me. They keep embarrassing us. Those of us with the Leafs jerseys, it's like, don't embarrass me.
Luann knows what's up. It's the bleu, blanc, et rouge. When's the draft lottery, by the way? When's the draft lottery?
Like the 26th of June or something like that.
Dude, do you know how many YouTubers are going to be like doing shows, and how many, like, we should just do a draft lottery show, knowing that only 100 people are going to watch us, but we should just sit there, because you did Off the Record for so many years. You hosted your own show on TSN Radio. I worked at the Fan with you back in the day. Of course, Hockey Night. We could have a little bit of fun, just the comments alone.
My arts friends don't understand my love of sports. My sports friends don't understand why I'm so into art.
That's great. Oh, did Dallas go up in the series? Did I dyslexic that? Yeah, Dallas is up in the series. Still got a chance to make some paper, baby. I still got a chance to make some paper.
Bring up the font for Dr. Stewart one more time.
Dr. Stewart.
Yeah.
Project Street Vet.
This guy was amazing. If anybody is interested in this sort of thing, tell your friends about it. This guy came on, was so articulate and so passionate about what he does, protecting animals out there, bringing his veterinary skills to the unhoused. It's pretty beautiful.
That full conversation we posted separately on this YouTube channel as well. Last week we had Lindsay Adario on, the great photojournalist. That interview is going to go up very shortly on the online. We'll also post on social media. We'll post the Distel Zola one, which is great. Of course, Kwane Stewart is amazing. On behalf of them and them
and all
them,
sure.
and everybody that's hanging out.
All these amazing people, and I'm thinking to myself, and we should also promote the fact that we did a new metal show on Apple tonight.
Oh yeah, that's right. So okay, next week. Okay, hold on. So tomorrow is new metals. Tomorrow, new metal.
New metal was tonight.
Oh, new metal's tonight. What's tomorrow? What are we doing? I can't remember. We do so many shows.
We do. Tomorrow's a look at 1989 and how 1989 is the beginning of modern music.
I love that. Remember, we talked a little bit about Bob's Garden earlier today and being in the natural world. What Tom Waits said, right? Don't plant your bad days. They grow. And if you want to find Bobby, you can find him for sure on social media. He is, as you know, the Parkdale Panther. And so this is going to be your new logo, by the way, I think. Look at this.
Ooh, I like that.
That's your new logo. Bobby, we'll talk tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll probably talk in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I guess we will talk in 5 minutes. I'm gonna go make some dinner now. But thanks for hanging out with us today. We had a lot of people watching today, more than last week. We know it's a slow burn. We know that it's just a couple of buddies talking. But really, as Bob said, as much as we love messing around and as casual as we are very intentional about the space we want to create here. We are very intentional about creating a space where you, if you're feeling busted up and alone, you can hang out. We won't cover all the grounds, but we'll cover enough that you could step over and you can get to that next place. We are so interested in making sure that you're okay and that you go to bed feeling better, knowing more, and being a little lovelier than when you woke up.
George, you know my life. Who am I going to judge?
Thanks, buddy. I'll talk to you in a bit.
Bye.
Goodbye. Bye.